Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I don't want to talk about a specific book that I read, but rather I want to do the usual wrap-up and TBR, since it is the end of January and the beginning of February. In January, I thought there were some pretty good reads, some stuff that didn't hit quite as well, but I feel like it was a great start to 2025. At least in terms of literature, in terms of like politics and just real life things, maybe not as well as it could have gone, but hopefully things get better or aren't as awful in those regards. And hopefully the great books that I'm reading continue to be great going forward. I do have a lot of fun things planned for February. I'm still looking for some romance literature to get into, but I'll talk more about that in the TBR. But without further ado, I'm going to do a wrap-up, a TBR, and we'll move on from there. So for the wrap-up, what did I read in January? In terms of books, I read That Night in the Library by Eva Jursik, which was a book I picked up in Toronto. I thought it wasn't that great, pretty boring, and it didn't really seem like much of a murder mystery, given that the murder that took place was actually just an accident the whole time. So not really a lot to it. I also read Chicago, which I thought was boring, but it's boring more so that it didn't seem to be for me. It explored the lives of immigrants Egyptian immigrants in America at the time of the Egyptian Revolution around 2010. And it seems interesting, but this story was just really average and it didn't really stick out to me, so that was unfortunate. But I do think other people might find more enjoyment from it. I also read Deathnote Volumes 3 and 4, which I thought was really good. Volume 4 stood out particularly. It was especially notable. I feel like it was as good as some of the Berserk graphic novels from the Golden Age arc. A lot of sort of interesting dynamics between Light and Elle as they try to figure out who exactly the other person is. Is Light Kira? What is Elle's real name? And what happens when you throw a young goth woman into the mix? It makes for some really good storytelling. So I definitely recommend that you seek that out. I also read Hungry Ghost by Victoria Ying, I believe her name was. I thought it was a good graphic novel, exploring, issues of weight and parental expectations and cultural expectations too. I probably should have talked about it, but I wanted to sort of get to other things really quickly there. I also read Walk Two Moons, which I thought was fantastic. That's by Sharon Creech. It was on my TBR for 2025, a young adult story, but it was really solid, and I think it has something for adults as well. And it certainly presents a lot of challenging ideas to young readers, which is what you want to see in young adult fiction. So definitely one of the stronger entries for the month of January. And then I also read Gods with a Little G by Tupelo Hassman, which I thought was pretty good. I ended up not making a video about it because I felt there wasn't a lot to latch onto, but if I had to review it here, I would say there's a lot of interesting things that Hassman has to say about living in a small town, especially in one that's sort of been taken over by religious types. And so growing up in that kind of area is bound to be stressful, and you're going to feel restricted, and you're going to feel like maybe you can't really go anywhere, especially if you're, your parent, one of your parents has died and you feel like you can't connect to the other one. So good ideas there, but it also is largely meandering. I feel like it could have been a year-end contender as possibly one of the best stories that I've read in general if Hassman had managed to sort of create something to latch onto, much more substantial plot. I feel like that was overall missing and makes it sort of fall by the wayside for me. I also read This One Summer by Mariko Tamaki, which I thought was fun. A friendship between two young women as they sort of develop feelings for boys and sort of explore other things. I mentioned it was by Mariko Tamaki. I've actually read another one of her graphic novels, Harley Quinn Breaking Out, which was... It was pretty good. I do want to explore more of Mariko Tamaki's writing and her collaboration with Jillian Tamaki, which I believe is her cousin or her sister or something like that. They have an interesting dynamic, and it makes for some high quality stories, I feel. So maybe seek that out at your local library. That's where I found a lot of these stories. I also read a number of short stories for January, including Cowboys and Angels, which was good. A Telephone Call by Dorothy Parker, which was good but mostly forgettable. The Burial of the Guns, which I thought was revisionist trash. The author attempts to paint the Confederacy as some noble, endeavor, especially the soldiers who were fighting for slavery. And, as many other authors too, try to change it so that it seems like they're fighting for their heritage, for like the lost cause of the Confederacy. And that's not what's happening, and that's irresponsible. And therefore I can't ever recommend that to anyone. In fact, I strongly urge you to sort of like avoid that author at all costs, because nothing good can come from reading what they've written, especially if they're willing to sort of pardon the South for their role in trying to preserve slavery. And then I also read Jerry's Crab Shack, 1 star, a fun short story title. I feel like it was the best of the month for short stories, particularly because it's presented as a Yelp review that devolves or evolves into more of a review of a man's marriage, noting how he still loves his wife, but there are some stressful things going on. And so it's very fascinating sort of story structure, I think, and one that is worth reading. So definitely check that out, or check out the video as well, because you can also find out like what the name of the overall short story collection is called. And then I also read a number of poems, some of which were left over from Christmas. They have a winter themed, be sure to check out my Poetry Thursday playlist if you want to find out some of those videos and those poems. But what do I intend to read for February? I have a TBR here planned. I'm looking for some romance literature, but again, I'll talk about that in a few moments. In terms of books, I'm currently reading Sphere by Michael Crichton. It's one of the better Michael Crichton books. I feel like it either falls on two sides for me. Either I really like it, like with Timeline or Jurassic Park, or I feel like Michael Crichton could do a lot better with like The Lost World or Prey. I haven't really found a middle ground yet where it's just like, okay, this is okay. And I think that just has to do with Michael Crichton's writing, but I can't wait to talk about it. A book called Sawbones, which I got from my friend Bevan when she moved to India, so I still got to make my way through the books that they gave me. Some Black History Month reads that I got from my local library. I also want to read If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. I've heard great things about that book, and I've heard great things about James Baldwin, so hopefully that's a good read. And then a bunch of graphic novels that I'm picking up from the library or trying to buy in some capacity. Those will all be things that I check out too. Black History Month continues with short stories as well. I have a number of authors that I've sort of picked some stories from, including Langston Hughes, who I've talked about on this channel before, and Guy Mark Foster, who I haven't. And I feel like it's important to sort of, especially during Black History Month, to seek out these authors, because as I talk about a lot, whenever I go to the library and I try to randomly select something, maybe it's because my library doesn't make an effort to find diverse authors, or maybe it's just because for the longest time, and even currently, the literature world has been exclusionary towards people of color, at least in America. It's hard to find those books without really searching for it, but I found some authors that are worth talking about. and then a number of poems as well, all of which have Black authors, Black poets, which I'm looking for specifically, as I said. So, a lot of good poems and good short stories to look forward to. I am having some trouble finding books to read that are not about Black like writers, but like romance books, as I mentioned before. There is a lot in the romance genre, but I'm trying to find good literature, not simply smut and not simply just middle of the road literature for people who want to read, again, sexy kind of things. I'm looking for something of substance, something of value, and I haven't really found that, I don't feel, and it's really discouraging. And well, I feel like I need to step out for a moment to really think about it. So give me a moment. Sorry, I just needed a change of pace. This is my closet. I come here to, think about certain things, especially, about the state of love, because, like, does love even exist? I'm trying to find books about love for Valentine's Day, and I don't really know. Like, does love even exist? Can you find books about love? I know good romantic literature, exists. I just wish somebody would show me such books.
No, listen here, you boggin' commie. You cannot just go around saying whatever you please.
Oh wow, it's our friend the Loch Ness Monster. Apparently she hangs out in my closet sometimes. How are you doing, Nessie?
What are you doing calling me a friend? You're insulting the romance genre, and you still owe me a tenner from the time the ice cream truck came round.
It was good ice cream. What brings you around today?
As I said, I cannot sit back while you sully the good name of the romance genre. Anna Karenina, Jane Eyre. The world of literature is chock full of good romance if you open your silly American eyes. And, since Valentine's Day is coming up, I'm going to do you a favour and issue you a challenge to read a classic Jane Austen novel featuring romance and sassy upper-class lassies. Mr. Nothing, you must read Pride and Prejudice in February.
Well, Nessie is never wrong, so I guess Pride and Prejudice is on the agenda for next month. And yeah, I'm back. So that's a great recommendation from the Loch Ness Monster, as I pointed out. Pride and Prejudice will be on the agenda. Hopefully I'll have that ready by Valentine's Day. If you have any recommendations or you just want to comment on something I've said here, do so in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about these books, make recommendations, or simply, find out about my channel. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and February travels. Farewell.